I've always believed that God is in the details, that it's a drag and you sit there and you have to try and get it right. But I think Twain says the difference between the right word and almost the right word is the difference between, lightning and a lightning bug. It's just like that when you get the right wording, when you get it just right, it makes a difference. And I think the work that you and Norm did on Update is proof that you guys worked really hard. You got fired for it because unfortunately one of the people at the top at NBC was a good friend of OJ's.
Was his closest friend.
And you got fired for that. But you've always thought that was a kind of a proud moment for you because a lot of people reached out when that happened and identified that was the wrong move.
I had so many, I mean, it was really, I have to say, I'm not the most sensible person in my personal life. You probably know me well enough, Conan, to have picked that up. But
I'll testify to that.
I didn't, I'd gotten divorced that year, basically, so I was sort of, maybe I was feeling kind of, it's kind of ornery but certainly, and also like with a little less responsibility. Norm, I know, took it much harder than I did. I sort of looked at it philosophically and said, you know what? It's like, the A.E. Housman poem to an athlete dying young, before fame outran the man, kind of thing. And if that's, maybe I have that backwards too, but anyway, we were yanked off, and maybe that's better than risking that where you peak and then it's downhill.
You stick around too long.
Yeah. And we didn't we weren't put in that position of having to, to make that decision. It was made for us. But I know that Norm, the story about that, I know you know this story, but I think people who are fans of Norm deserve to know this about him. The network went to Norm and said, we want to get rid of Jim Downey. And we just want you to know you're cool with that, right? He said, no, if you can't fire him, if you fire him, I quit. And they go, that's crazy. I mean, he's not helping you, the segment's too mean or whatever. And he said, well, no, I'm not doing it without him. And he never told me that. And I didn't hear that for years. I heard it from some network executives. And and part of everything else, if that had been me, that would have been, you bet Norm would have heard, You
would have talked about it. Yeah,
of course. I mean, come on.
Norm didn't, he was very stoic, old world. He came from a different century.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when he died, you called me and you said, you were mad at me initially. You said, I can't believe you didn't tell me, Conan. And I said, I didn't know. None of us knew. Laurie Jo knew.
And Mark Gervitz, his manager, knew.
Well, Gervitz knows everything.
His mother and his son knew.
Yeah.
And his brother. So outside of family, it was like 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't, and I know why he didn't. I've been told, and it made perfect sense, so I believe it, that he just didn't want it to ever be about anything but being funny. Yep. He didn't want to be brave or fighting the good fight or, he didn't want to do heartwarming stuff. And he just wanted to be, but I was a little hurt that he didn't tell me. But I talked to him, I guess, I know you may have talked to him more recently than I'd had, but I talked to him certainly the summer of 2021, August.
We were trying to get him on my last late night show, which was 2 years, not long before he passed. And we were trying really hard to get him to be, because I wanted nothing more than him to be one of the last guests. And he was considering it, but then wouldn't do it. And then, and I think he knew that he didn't.
He also didn't, he knew that his appearance was kind of changing and he didn't want to.
Yeah.
But, I know this is shifting from one kind of bravery to another, but one of my proudest moments was a joke we did. And I think it was a Frank joke, Frank Sebastiano, but it was, there's a certain type of annoying fuck, exactly what we're talking about, the kiss ass stuff. But it was a joke where we took the world's most innocuous kind of C-section news story, and we would clip a real news story and show it on the monitor so that the audience knew this is a real thing. We didn't make it up, and we did that for most of our things, and so the story was like, Denver City Council approves traffic light for Martin Avenue, and so it goes to Norm. It's like, this week, the Denver City Council finally, on its third attempt, voted funds for a new traffic light on Martin Avenue. Then he turns dramatically to another camera and goes, maybe they would have voted the funding earlier if instead of a traffic light, it was for rich white men. and then we bring up a lower third. Applaud now. But that's the kind of stuff that there's not really a great place to laugh in that joke.
Right.
That's a thing that, like, Norm, we would do our run through, like, we would work on the jokes a bit during the week, but mainly Friday night. And that's when especially I would do a lot of rewriting and refining, and then I'd run through stuff with Norm. And then Saturday we do a run through, and then we're always screaming. We're always kind of late, getting in the studio really late because they were, come on guys, we're losing time. So we'd come down, do a run through, and we'd make a few kind of changes, maybe think of some things for Norm to add, and then we'd have a dress. And then my attitude with Lorne Michaels, the producer, the big guy, was always like, tell us how long you want the segment to be. We're like, because we're the most easily bologna sliced segment, And my attitude, and Norm kind of agreed, it's like, Norm wanted he didn't want to feel that like we had to have we were entitled to a certain amount of the show. But I always argued, like, anything, if we're cutting lean, we're in good shape,
Yeah.
So, I mean, sure, we'll always cut the fat. Everyone should do that. But if we also have to give up something we don't want to give up, it's probably a good indication.
It's
and anyway, if it's something, a lot of our stuff can be done next week.
Yeah.
And so, we would do 6-minute updates. I think we did a 5-minute. They do like 12-minute updates now. And they did them before us. And Norm, I will say this: Norm was not crazy about features.
Yeah.
He wasn't crazy about having other people on the segment. Always, and sometimes I had to like get him to be more involved with the guests.
Yeah.
But Seth Meyers was the best ever at interacting with. I mean, he was great at that. I wish Norm had been a little more playful like that.
I always took away from you, and I think about, you're in my head a lot over the years that I've been writing and all the years that I've been doing things. And you're surprisingly easy to masturbate to. No, you're but you're also in my head for another reason. No, you're in my head because there's an ethic that I got from you, and I also got from Robert Smigel, and I try to pick from the best, which is, if I can lose it, yes, trim the fat, but also sometimes cut into the muscle, and lose, if you're losing something for time that you really love, but you love that other stuff more, you're in great territory, and this thing is really going to fly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great...
I remembered, by the way, the reason I brought all that stuff up. It's because...
I was just killing time to remember.
Norm was the guy who, and performers, because you're a hybrid, performers really don't want to give up stuff that got a huge laugh ever.
Mm-hmm.
Norm would totally throw out something if he came to suspect it was not the kind of laugh we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that doesn't mean like it was dirty or something. If it was like cheap or easy or whatever. And the thing is, you could give Norm a choice of like, okay, this is absolutely guaranteed to kill. It'll get a mini standing ovation, but it's hacky and we both know it. This is guaranteed to die. I promise you we'll get, death camp silence. But it's fucking brilliant. Norm would unhesitatingly go for the silence. But I would go, yeah, I would too, but I'm not the guy out there.
Yeah.
He is. And I always fucking love that about him. He would never reject something because it's funny, but they're going to laugh, And I had fights with people that you and I both respect who just, oh man, it killed. You go, yeah, but come on, man.